Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere that smells faintly of olive oil, sawdust, and a breakfast porridge that nobody asked for, but everyone ate anyway. We're stepping into the world of the Roman gladiator. Not the Hollywood version, not the one with the slow-motion sword swings and the dramatic cape billowing in the Colosseum wind. I mean the real version. The one who woke up at dawn in a stone room, stretched his sore shoulder for the fourth morning in a row, waited in line for the bathhouse, and then spent most of his Tuesday being shouted at by a trainer with extremely strong opinions about footwork. Because here is the thing about gladiators that the movies never quite got around to telling you. A gladiator's life was, most of the time, not the arena. Most of the time, it was the school. The Ludus. A place with walls, rules, a schedule, 3 meals a day, and a doctor who visited every week whether you needed him or not. A place that was, in its own peculiar way, almost ordinary. Almost. Before we go any further, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if this is genuinely the kind of thing you enjoy, which, if you're here at this hour, it probably is. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. It is always either just past midnight or embarrassingly early in the morning, and I find both of those entirely acceptable. Now, dim those lights, pull your blanket up, let the fan run if you have one, and settle in, because tonight we are in absolutely no hurry, and neither were the Romans. Let's pause for just a moment before we begin. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to wake up as a gladiator in ancient Rome? Not the fighting part, the waking up part, the getting out of bed part, the eating breakfast part. Did gladiators really eat barley porridge every single morning? And if so, what did they think about that? Did they have friends? Did they complain about their trainers? Did someone leave their sandals in the wrong place in the changing room and cause a minor diplomatic incident? What did the Ludus actually look like from the inside? Was it grim and silent and terrifying? Or was it more like a very intense athletic dormitory where someone was always monopolizing the practice dummy? Did the Romans treat gladiators like valuable professionals, or like furniture that occasionally won prize money? And what did it feel like to lie down at night in your stone room, pull your blanket over you, and just exist in that strange life? Not quite a soldier, not quite a slave, not quite a free man, but something that Rome had invented specifically. Because Rome was Rome and couldn't leave anything alone? Let's find out. And now, you've just woken up in Rome. The year is 152 AD. The emperor is Antoninus Pius, a man so relentlessly calm and reasonable that history barely remembers him, which is perhaps the greatest compliment history can pay anyone. The city outside the walls of your Ludus is already awake, already loud, already doing what Rome does at dawn, which is everything, all at once, with tremendous confidence. But in here, in your room, it is still early, and the day has not yet made any demands of you. Get comfortable. We're going to take our time. You do not wake up to an alarm. You wake up to light. The window of your room is small, a narrow rectangle cut high in the stone wall, just wide enough to let in a stripe of morning sky. In summer, the light comes early and golden and lands across the floor like a long, thin knife. In winter, it comes gray and reluctant and does not reach as far, but it comes. Every morning, without negotiation, the light arrives through the small, high window, and this is how the day begins. The room is not large. It is not small either, for what it is. You have seen smaller. When you first arrived at the Ludus Magnus, the great training school here in Rome, built just beside the Colosseum itself, last connected to it by an underground passage that you have walked through exactly once and do not think about very often. When you first arrived, you were put in a room with 3 other men. That was 3 years ago. Now you have a room to yourself, which is one of the quiet privileges that comes with time and with a record that other men notice. The walls are stone, plastered, not bare, and painted in a reddish ochre that has faded over the years into something softer, more orange than red. The color of old terracotta left in the sun. Someone scratched something into the plaster near the door. You cannot read it, because it is in a dialect from the eastern provinces that you never learned, but you have looked at those scratched letters many mornings and thought about the man who put them there, and whether he is still here, and somewhere else in the Ludus, or whether he is gone in one of the ways that men go from this place. You do not think about this for long. You have learned not to. There is a wooden bed frame, low to the ground. A mattress stuffed with wool that is compressed over time into something firmer than it was meant to be, but still far better than the floor, which you slept on during your first 2 weeks here while the mattress situation was sorted out. There is a blanket, thick and rough and the color of undyed wool, which is not beautiful but is genuinely warm, and warmth in a stone room in the Roman winter is not a small thing. There is a shelf on the wall where you keep what you have. A small clay oil lamp, which you use sparingly because oil is allocated and not unlimited. A piece of cloth you use as a towel. A comb, horn, eye missing 2 teeth on one side. A small object that you brought with you when you came here. Something personal, which we will not name because it belongs to you and to no one else. That is what you have in your room. It is, you have concluded after 3 years, enough. You lie still for a moment after waking, not from laziness but from habit. From the understanding, learned slowly and then all at once, that this, the horizontal, the quiet, the nobody asking anything, is a resource. And resources are not to be wasted. Your shoulder is stiff. It is almost always stiff in the morning now, the left one, from an old impact that the doctor wrapped and treated and declared healed, which it more or less is, but which announces itself every morning with a dull throb that requires acknowledgement before it will settle down. You acknowledge it. You rotate the shoulder slowly, once, twice. The joint makes a sound. You look at the ceiling. The ceiling is plain stone, close enough to touch if you stood on the bed, which you don't, because the bed is for sleeping and for lying still in the mornings, not for standing on. There is a crack in the plaster above your head that runs diagonally from near the window toward the far corner. You have watched this crack for 3 years. It has not grown. You take a mild but genuine satisfaction in this. Outside your door, you can hear the beginning sounds of the Ludus waking up, the low murmur of voices further down the corridor, someone's door opening, footsteps on stone, the clang of something metal from the direction of the kitchen, which means the morning meal is being prepared, which means you have perhaps 20 minutes before the day properly begins. You sit up. The bathhouse is on the south side of the courtyard. You pick up your cloth, your oil flask, small, half full, and your strigil, the curved metal scraper that is your primary bathing instrument, and you walk out into the corridor. The corridor of the Ludus is long and lined with doors, most of them closed. The walls here are plain stone, no plaster, no paint, just the stone itself worn smooth along the edges where generations of shoulders have brushed it. There are torches in iron brackets spaced at intervals, though at this hour with light coming from the open end of the corridor, they are not lit. Other men are moving in the same direction as you, some still looking half asleep, some already alert, all of them carrying the same equipment, because the morning wash is not optional. The Laniste, the men who run the school, have opinions about hygiene that are, by Roman standards, progressive, and by any standard, firmly enforced. You nod to the man who falls into step beside you. His name is Brennus. He came from the northern provinces, Gaul, you think, though he has never said directly. And he has been at the Ludus for nearly 2 years, which means he is no longer new but is not yet established, and he navigates this in-between position with a careful quiet that you understand. He is large and moves with the contained carefulness of a man who knows exactly how much space he takes up and does not want to take up more than he has been given. Shoulder, he says, because he has noticed, because in a place like this people notice these things. Manageable, you say. This is the extent of the conversation. It is, between the two of you, sufficient. The bathhouse is a single large room with a vaulted ceiling and a series of stone basins along the walls, each one fed by pipes from a central cistern that the slaves fill before dawn. The water is cold. It is always cold in the morning. There is a warm room further in, a small caldarium with a pool heated by the hypocaust system beneath the floor, but the warm room is available only at midday and in the evening. The morning wash is cold water and discipline. You pour water from the basin over your head and shoulders. The cold arrives all at once, a blunt physical fact, and your body responds to it immediately, the way your body always responds to cold water, which is by informing you very clearly that it does not enjoy this but is managing. You pour oil from the small flask onto your arms and work it across your skin, and then you take the strigil and draw it across in long strokes, scraping away the oil, and with it the sweat and dust of yesterday, the practice yard, the afternoon training, the evening. This is how Romans bathe. Not with soap. Soap in the Roman world is an occasional curiosity, not a standard practice, but with oil in the scraper, which sounds strange until you have done it several hundred times, and then it simply sounds like bathing. The bathhouse is full of the sounds of men washing. Water poured, the scrape of metal against skin, low conversation, someone laughing at something near the far wall, the laugh of a man who has just been told something he finds genuinely funny and is not trying to manage his reaction for anyone's benefit. You dry yourself with the cloth, which is not particularly effective but does the work. You run the comb through your hair, working through the knots with the two-toothed side, which requires patience. By the time you are done, the light outside has shifted from gray to gold, and the smell of the morning porridge is drifting across the courtyard from the kitchen, and your stomach, which has been politely silent until now, speaks up. The dining hall of the Ludus is a large room with long stone tables and wooden benches, open along one wall to the courtyard, so that in good weather there is a draught, and in bad weather there is a draught with rain in it, which the Romans consider acceptable, and which you have come to accept, if not quite agree with. You take your bowl from the stack beside the kitchen entrance, a wide, shallow clay bowl worn smooth from use, and you join the line. The morning meal is barley porridge. It is always barley porridge. This is not an oversight. This is not because whoever does the ordering forgot to think of anything else. Gladiators eat barley as a deliberate and considered nutritional decision by the Lannistae and the doctors who advise them. Barley is dense. Barley is filling. Barley builds, and this is the technical understanding of the day, a layer of subcutaneous padding that is believed to protect the internal organs and the major blood vessels from the kind of cuts and punctures that are an occupational feature of your profession. Whether this is precisely correct in every medical detail is perhaps open to discussion. What is not open to discussion is that you eat the barley. You take your bowl of porridge and a piece of flatbread and a small cup of something that is water mixed with a modest amount of vinegar. Pasca, the drink of soldiers and gladiators and anyone who needs hydration and cannot be given wine before noon, which is everyone in this building before noon, and you find a place on the bench. The men around you eat in varying states of alertness. Some are fully awake, talking, the morning conversation of men who live closely together and know each other's habits and have 1,000 small ongoing discussions about nothing very important. The trainer, Salvius, holds strong views on left foot positioning. The new batch of recruits who arrived last month include one who snores with extraordinary volume. The evening stew 2 days ago had something in it that nobody could identify. These are the topics of the morning table, and they are discussed with the same conversational investment that in another world might be given to philosophy or politics. The porridge is plain. You have had it so many times that you no longer taste it consciously, the way you no longer consciously hear the ambient sounds of the ludus, the way you no longer consciously notice the smell of the place. These things are simply the texture of your life now, the background against which things happen. You eat steadily. You finish the bread. Brennus sits down across from you with his own bowl and eats with the focused quiet of a man who takes eating seriously, which is a quality you respect. There is a version of this place where you talk constantly through meals, filling the air, and there is a version where you eat in silence, and your personal preference has always been closer to the silent end, and Brennus's preferences happen to align with yours, which is one of the reasons you have fallen into something like companionship. From where you sit, you can see through the open wall to the courtyard, the practice yard. It is a large open space, rectangular, with a sandy floor that is raked in the mornings and churned up by the afternoons. Around its perimeter are the training posts, the palus, thick wooden stakes driven into the ground, the things you spend a great deal of your time attacking with a wooden practice sword, which is called a rudis, and which is made of heavy hardwood and is deliberately heavier than a real weapon, so that when you eventually use the real thing, it feels lighter in your hand. The yard is empty right now. In an hour it will not be. And you look at it while you eat your porridge and drink your pasca and think about nothing in particular, which is a skill you have developed over time, and which is among the more useful things the ludus has given you. After the meal, there is a period before training begins, perhaps half an hour, which is structured but not strictly supervised. Most men use it for small personal tasks: repairing equipment, sharpening, writing, for those who can write, which is not everyone but is more than you might expect, talking, sitting in the sun if there is sun, which today there is, the October sun thin and pleasant on the stone wall of the courtyard. You use this time for your body, not dramatically, not in the way it might be depicted, all intense stretching and warrior preparation, simply, carefully, because your body is your instrument, and you have learned, more from watching others than from being told, that an instrument that is not maintained becomes unreliable, and an unreliable instrument in your profession has consequences. You sit on the low bench along the east wall of the courtyard where the morning sun reaches first, and you work through your routine. The shoulder first. Slow rotations forward and back, the joint moving through its range the way the doctor taught you, extending a little further each morning than the morning before. When you arrived here 3 years ago, you were young enough to treat your body with the casual confidence of someone who believes it will simply continue to function. You are still young, 26, which is not old, but you are no longer casual. You press your fingertips into the muscle along the top of the shoulder. I'm finding the knot that lives there, working it slowly. The pain of this is a specific and recognizable pain, the kind that means something is being addressed, which is different from the kind that means something is wrong. You have learned to distinguish between these. The hands next. You spread them open, fingers extended, pressing them flat against your thighs, and then close them slowly into fists, open, close. The joints of the right hand ache slightly from yesterday's afternoon session with the shield, a session that Salvius extended by what felt like a deeply unnecessary amount of time. You work the fingers until the ache diminishes to an acceptable level. The left leg, then the right, the back of the neck, the area just below the left knee, where you took a practice sword impact 2 weeks ago that left a bruise so dramatic that the doctor looked at it and made a face, which is not the face you want a doctor to make. You do all of this quietly, without performance, while the courtyard around you gradually fills with the noise and movement of the morning. Men crossing with equipment, small arguments being conducted at low volume, someone calling across to someone else in one of the many languages that exist within these walls. The Ludus Magnus, at full population, holds perhaps 200 men from across the Roman world and beyond it. There are men from Rome itself, from the Italian provinces, from Gaul, from Germania, from North Africa, from Syria, from Thracia, from places further east, whose names you knew once and have half forgotten. There are freedmen who chose this life voluntarily, which the Romans find admirable and also slightly baffling. There are slaves who were assigned to it. There are prisoners of war from conflicts that ended before many of the younger men here were born. They speak perhaps 15 languages between them, and the common language is Latin, spoken by almost everyone in varying degrees of fluency, and complemented by the kind of wordless communication that develops between people who spend hours every day in close physical proximity, engaged in the same difficult work. You know most of their faces. You know some of their stories. You know whose injuries are healing and whose are not. You know who trains hard and who trains smart and who has somehow managed, improbably, to be both. And you know who gets quiet before a scheduled public event and who gets loud and which is more reliable as a sign of nerves. You know all of this in the way you know the courtyard and the porridge and the stripe of light through the window, simply without having tried to learn it. It is what happens when you live somewhere long enough. The sun has moved a little further up the wall. In a few minutes, Salvius will appear at the edge of the practice yard, and the day's training will begin. You finish working on your knee. You stand up slowly, testing the leg. It holds cleanly. Good. Salvius arrives exactly when he always arrives, which is precisely when you have stopped expecting him and started almost relaxing. He is a compact man, perhaps 50, with the specific build of someone who trained hard for many years and then stopped training hard, and the muscle became something denser and more settled, like wood that has been compressed. He was a gladiator himself once. He fought under a different Ludus in the south, and he has scars that he never talks about and does not need to, because they are visible enough to tell their own version of the story to anyone who cares to look. He stands at the edge of the practice yard and looks at it for a moment, the way he always does, the way a man looks at something that belongs to him and that he has responsibilities toward, and then he looks at the men in it. He sees everything. This is not an exaggeration. You have tested this early in your time here, in the small rebellious way that young men test the authority of the people above them. doing something slightly sloppily when you thought his back was turned. He turned. He said nothing for a moment. He simply looked at you. And then he said, in the measured and completely unexcited tone that is his default register, again, and do it correctly this time. Felix, he says, which is your name. Or rather, it is the name they gave you here, the name by which you are known in this place and in the arena. Your actual name is something else, something from before, from the province you came from the life that was a different shape than this one. That name still exists. You use it in the room where only you hear it, and in letters if you write them, which you do sometimes. But here you are, Felix. It means lucky in Latin. You did not choose it. You have, over time, made a kind of peace with it. Shoulder, says Salvius. It is not a question. Manageable, you say, which is what you said to Brennus earlier, because it is still true, and because with Salvius, as with Brennus, you have learned that precision is valued, and that telling him something is fine when it is not fine is an investment that pays out badly. He considers this for a moment. Warm it up for 15 minutes before the shield work, he says. I want to see the footwork sequence first. You nod. The training begins. The sequence Salvius wants is one you have practiced perhaps 800 times, perhaps more. You stopped counting. It is a movement pattern, advance, step, pivot, the weight shifting from one foot to the other in a specific order that is designed to position your body optimally for the follow-through, while keeping your lateral side angled away from the theoretical opponent in front of you. It sounds simple when described in words. It is not simple. It took you 3 months to do it without thinking, and another 6 months to do it correctly without thinking, and the distinction between those two things is significant. You go through it alone first, the way Salvius always begins, each man working through his patterns without a partner, moving across the sand of the courtyard in the specific rhythms of his style and his discipline. You are a secutor. This is your classification, your type, in the organized taxonomy of the Roman arena. The secutor is a heavy fighter. You carry a large rectangular shield, the scutum, and a short sword, the gladius. Your helmet is smooth and rounded with small eye holes, designed to give a targeting opponent, typically the retiarius, the net man, as little to catch on as possible. Your right arm is wrapped in a manica, a segmented metal arm guard. Your left leg wears a greave. You are armored and weighty, and you are built to advance, to press, to be the immovable thing that something else has to figure out how to stop. All of that is the arena. Here now, in the morning, in the practice yard, you move through the footwork sequence with a wooden sword and no armor and the October sun on your face, and it is simply movement. The body doing what the body has been taught. Left foot, right foot, pivot. The weight rolling through the sole, the hip turning, the wooden sword coming through in an arc that ends at the exact point where a shield would deflect it and a real sword would need to find a way past. Salvius watches. He says nothing, which is not the same as approval, but is also not disapproval. With Salvius, silence during a sequence means he is watching carefully, which means he has not yet found the thing that needs correcting, which means you should keep going and not slow down to look for his reaction. You complete the sequence. You return to the starting position. Again, he says. You do it again. This is what training is. This is what it is every day, and has been every day for 3 years, and will be every day for as long as you are here. The same sequences, the same corrections, the building of something that is not speed or strength exactly, but is the thing underneath speed and strength, the thing that makes both of them reliable when reliability matters most. You do not mind the repetition. You minded it once, in the early months, when it felt like something was being taken from you. The spontaneity, the instinct, the feeling of doing something from yourself rather than from instruction. But you understand it now. The repetition is not removing something. It is building something. It is making the correct thing, the automatic thing. And when you are in the arena, in front of 40,000 Romans, in the particular noise and heat and weight of that place, you do not want to be thinking about footwork. You want your feet to already know. The training session runs for 2 hours with a brief rest in the middle. You work the footwork sequence for the first part. Then Salvius pairs you with a man named Gallus for the shield work. The two of you putting on practice equipment and going through controlled exchanges. Salvius watching and interrupting, correcting the angle of the shield, the timing of the step. Gallus is quicker than you, and in the earlier months this frustrated you. Now it is simply information. He is quick, which means you must be solid, which means the shield work must be impeccable, because you will not outquick Gallus, and trying to is a waste of time that could be spent getting better at what you are. Salvius stops you after an exchange where you got the timing wrong. You moved early, he says. You know, you felt it even as it happened. Do you know why? He asks. I anticipated, you say. You anticipated, he agrees, which means you stopped reading and started guessing. What happens when you guess? You're wrong, you say. And guessing means you're not watching. He nods once. You go again. The second hour is harder. The sun is fully up now, and the October morning has given way to an October midday that is warmer than it looked from the stone room, and the practice yard sand holds the heat, and you are sweating through the work in a way that is functional and expected and not comfortable. Your shoulder is doing what you asked it to do, which is function within acceptable parameters. The knee is fine. The hand joints have quieted. When Salvius calls the end of the session, you stand for a moment in the courtyard with your hands on your knees, the wooden sword hanging at your side, breathing. Beside you, Gallus is doing the same thing, his quick body breathing as hard as yours, which is one of the honest equalities of this kind of work. It costs everyone the same, regardless of how fast you are. Good, says Salvius, which from Salvius is a notable word, and everyone in earshot receives it quietly, the way you receive a small unexpected gift without making too much of it. After training, the midday meal, then a period of rest. The midday meal is more substantial than the morning. Barley again, which you knew it would be, but this time cooked into a flatter, denser cake rather than a porridge, with beans on the side and a portion of vegetables, whatever is in season. Today, something that appears to be leeks and some form of squash, roasted, not bad. There is also, at the midday meal on days when training has been heavy, a small portion of meat. Today, there is a piece of boiled pork, not large, but there, and you eat it carefully, the way you eat anything that has protein and that your body needs. The doctor comes through the dining hall during the meal, as he does most days, moving between the tables with the deliberate, unhurried manner of a man doing rounds, stopping here and there, asking questions, looking at a wrist, listening to a description of something that has been worrying someone, making notes on the small wax tablet he carries. The doctor's name is Lucius. He is a freedman, Greek originally, educated in the medical tradition that goes back to Hippocrates, which is to say, he knows more about human bodies than most people in Rome, and operates on principles that are considerably more sensible than much of what passes for medicine in the city at large. He believes in rest for injuries. He believes in proper nutrition, which is why the barley is the barley. He believes in observation, in asking questions, and in not treating things you don't understand, which sounds obvious, but is in Rome surprisingly countercultural. He stops at your place on the bench. "Shoulder," he says, because apparently this is what people say to you today, and you are beginning to feel that you should simply wear a small sign. "Stiff this morning," you say. Worked it through before training. Managed through the session. He sets down his tablet and puts his hands on your shoulder, the way a doctor puts his hands on something, not casually, but with the attention of someone gathering information through touch. He rotates the joint, carefully, asking where and how much. You tell him. He nods. "I'll give you a compound to rub in tonight," he says. "Don't skip it." You say you won't skip it. He looks at you with the mild skepticism of a man who has been told this before by people who then skipped it. "I won't skip it," you say again, with slightly more conviction. He moves on. You finish your meal. You take your bowl to the stack and go back to your room. The rest period is an hour, sometimes closer to 90 minutes depending on what the afternoon holds. You go to your room. The room is warm now, the October sun having moved around to the west and finding the small high window, sending a stripe of afternoon light across the floor that lands further from the bed than the morning stripe, closer to the door. The room looks different in this light. Warmer, almost, briefly, like somewhere a person chose to be. You lie down. The mattress receives you with the resigned competence of a mattress that has been doing this for years. You put your arm over your eyes to block the light. Around you, the Ludus is quieter than it was. Not silent. It is never silent, the way Rome is never silent, because Rome is a city of 2 million people, and the noise of that many people does not have an off position, but quieter. The sounds are softer during the rest period, the shuffling of feet in the corridor rather than the purposeful stride of morning. Voices lower or absent, the distant, eternal noise of the city beyond the walls, which you have learned to hear as a kind of ambient hum that means nothing specific, the way you might hear the sea. You do not sleep. You almost never sleep during the midday rest. Your body is awake, trained by years of schedule to know the difference between this horizontal and the nighttime horizontal. But you are still. Your eyes are closed. Your breathing slows. You think, in the loose, unfocused way of someone resting but not sleeping, about nothing that could be called a plan or a worry. About the footwork sequence, the moment where you moved early, the specific feeling of it, the way Salvius's observation landed without surprise because you already knew. About the shoulder, and whether the compound Lucius gives you will actually help, or whether this is simply what this shoulder is now, 3 years into this work, and the shoulder has its own understanding of the arrangement. About a letter you received last week from your sister, who is in the city, who is married to a man who works in the administration of a grain warehouse near the river, and who has 2 children you have never met because they were born after you came here, and whose names you know from letters, but whose faces are unknown to you. In the letter she said that the older one, a boy of 4, asked who Felix was, and she told him Felix was his uncle. And he said, "What is an uncle?" And she wrote this down in the letter as something she found funny. And you read it in your room in the evening and found it funny too, and then found it something else for a moment, something that does not have a clean name, and then put the letter on the shelf, with the lamp and the comb and the personal object. You think about this without dwelling on it, which is the only way to think about some things. The stripe of light has moved slightly by the time you open your eyes. You sit up. You get the small jar of oil from the shelf and work some of it into your shoulder, the way Lucius showed you, working the muscle slowly and firmly. You do this until the joint feels warmer and more willing. Then you stand, stretch, and go back out into the courtyard for the afternoon. The afternoon session is different from the morning. The morning is technical, footwork, sequences, the specific mechanical work of improving what already exists. The afternoon is more applied, longer practice exchanges, work with full equipment, the physical endurance element of the training that is less about precision and more about sustaining precision when your body wants to be done. You put on the practice armor, which is heavier than it sounds and makes you, when fully equipped, a significantly different physical proposition than you are in your tunic in the morning. The manica goes on first, the layered metal plates buckled at the shoulder and wrist, the whole thing settling on your right arm with a weight you know so well you no longer consciously register it. Then the greave on the left leg. Then the practice helmet, not the full rounded secutor helmet, just a practice version, open-faced but still heavy, still warm inside, still producing, within the first few minutes of wearing it, a specific quality of heat that is one of the occupational features of your discipline. Then the shield. The scutum is 4 feet of curved plywood covered in leather and linen, with a metal boss in the center and metal edges that catch and deflect. It weighs 10 pounds, perhaps a little more. When you are fresh, it is heavy. When you are 2 hours into the afternoon session, it is heavier. By the end, it is its own relationship, something you are negotiating with rather than simply carrying. You work with Gallus again in the afternoon, and with 2 others whose disciplines are different from yours and from each other's. The afternoon practice is designed to expose you to variety, to situations you would not encounter if you only worked with the same type every day. You learn something different from each of them. From Gallus, as always, you learn something about patience, about the management of speed that is not yours, about not chasing. From the man called Ursus, who is large and fights in a style that prioritizes raw pressure, you learn about the management of your own ground, on the willingness to give an inch in order to not give a foot. From the retiarius, who works with you sometimes in the afternoons, the net man, your natural counterpart in the arena's paired style, you learn the most. Because the retiarius is what you will most often face when the day comes, and knowing how he moves, how he thinks, where the net commits before it lands, where the trident overextends. This is not academic knowledge. This is the knowledge that matters. His name is Darius. He is from the eastern provinces, Syria perhaps, and he is the most technically elegant fighter you have ever watched, which is irritating in the way that someone else's excellence is always, at a certain proximity, slightly irritating. He throws the net with a rotation of his whole body that is almost liquid, the lead waits on the net's edge describing a perfect circle, and you have spent approximately a year and a half learning to read the early movement in his shoulder that telegraphs the throw just before it commits. Today, you read it correctly twice. You do not read it correctly the 3rd time, and the net drops over your shield arm with the modest precision of someone who has done this about 9,000 times, and Darius grins at you over the trident he has not yet extended, because the etiquette of practice is that you don't extend the trident once the net has landed. You just stand there and grin. You extract your arm from the net with the dignity available to a man who has just had a net thrown at him. You paused, he says. I know, you say. You read the shoulder correctly. You paused between reading and moving. I know, you say again. He nods. He is not unkind about it. He is simply accurate, the way good practitioners of a specific skill are accurate about the mechanics of it, without drama. You go again. Lucius keeps a small room near the back of the Ludus, adjacent to the bathhouse, with a single window and a long wooden table on which he works, and shelves along the wall holding clay jars and linen wrappings and the modest but considered equipment of a Roman physician of the 2nd century, which includes things that are genuinely effective and things that are genuinely ancient and some things that are somewhere uncertain in between. He is there when you come to find him after the afternoon session, as he said he would be. The compound he gives you for the shoulder is a paste in a small clay jar, dense and dark, smelling of herbs you cannot fully identify. Something pine-like, something sharper, something that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but is definitively medicinal. He shows you again how to apply it, working it into the muscle above and behind the joint, with slow, deliberate pressure. You watch his hands while he demonstrates. Lucius's hands are the most capable hands you have ever observed. Not large, not particularly strong-looking, but precise in the way that instruments are precise, moving over the surface of what they are working on with a confidence that is not arrogance, but is simply knowledge, the specific certainty of someone who has spent 30 years learning what is under the skin and what it responds to. Doc, the inflammation is less than it was last month, he says, almost to himself, as he presses carefully around the joint. Is that good? You ask, which is a slightly unnecessary question. He looks at you with an expression that is the doctor version of Salvius's silence. Then, it's better than the alternative. He finishes and hands you the jar. Every night, before sleep, don't skip it. You say you won't skip it, and this time you mean it with slightly more conviction than earlier, because the way his hands moved over the shoulder reminded you that the shoulder is not simply a minor recurring inconvenience, but is a specific thing, a mechanical thing, that can get better or not get better, depending on what you do. On the shelf behind him, you can see a collection of texts, scrolls mostly, a few in codex form, which is the newer style of book, pages rather than a roll, that has been gaining use. The medical texts of Galen are there. You have heard him reference them. Galen himself is currently alive, actually, an extraordinary physician from Pergamon, who is the personal physician of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who came before Antoninus Pius, and whose work on the body is, according to Lucius, who holds opinions about this with great feeling, the most significant advance in Roman medicine in 2 centuries. Lucius once explained, at considerable length and with the enthusiasm of a man who does not often get to talk about this with someone who will listen, Galen's theory of the 4 humors and how it underpins the diagnosis and treatment of everything from fevers to the kind of shoulder inflammation you are currently experiencing. You listened with genuine attention, partly because Lucius is interesting when he talks about things he cares about, and partly because anything that helps the shoulder is, from a purely practical standpoint, useful to understand. You take the jar. You say goodnight. He is already looking at the next thing on the table. The evening meal is the meal that feels most like a meal. Whether this is because it comes at the end of the day's work, or because the food is slightly more varied, or simply because by this hour the body has expended what it expended and is making clear what it requires, you are not sure. But the evening meal sits at the table with a different quality than the morning porridge. People talk more. The room is warmer from the bodies in it and from the cooking fires, and the torches are lit, and there is a low collective sound in the dining hall, That is the sound of people doing what people do at the end of a day, which is setting the day down. Tonight, there is barley, which is always there, and lentils, and more of the roasted vegetables, and a modest amount of olive oil to dress the plate, and dried figs, a small portion, placed on the table in a clay dish that moves from hand to hand. You eat, you drink water, and the pascha, and feel both of them doing what they are supposed to do. Darius sits down across from you with his tray. You say nothing about the net throw from the afternoon session, because neither of you needs to say anything about it. He won the exchange. You both know why. Tomorrow you will try again. He tells you instead that he received word today that there is a Munis scheduled, a public games, in 6 weeks. He heard it from one of the men who heard it from a guard who heard it from someone in the Lanista's office. The chain of this information is, as all information in the Ludus is, somewhat uncertain in its links. But the general shape of it is probably true, because information of this type, in a place like this, tends to be more right than wrong. 6 weeks, you think. You eat your figs. 6 weeks is not close. It is not far. It is exactly the amount of time it is, which is a fact and not a problem, because problems are for things that can be changed, and the schedule of public games in Rome is not changed by whether any individual man in any ludus has feelings about it. You have been in the arena 4 times. You know what it is. You know the sound of it. The specific acoustic quality of 40,000 people in a structure designed to amplify sound. A noise that is not quite like any other noise, that is not a crowd in the ordinary sense of the word, but something larger than a crowd, something that does not have a human scale. You know the smell of the sand. You know the weight of the real equipment, which is heavier than the practice equipment and feels different on your body in a way that is specific and distinct. You know the particular quality of your own attention in that place, which becomes very simple and very clear. The way things become simple and clear when everything unnecessary has been removed. You know what the arena is. 6 weeks, you think again. And then you finish your figs, and you clear your tray, and you go to the bathhouse for the evening wash, which is warm, which is one of the things you look forward to each day, the warm room in the evening, the heat from the floor coming up through the stone, the small pool, the accumulated loosening of what the day accumulated. After the bath, you go back to your room. You sit on the edge of the bed and work Lucius's compound into your shoulder, slowly, the way he showed you, finding the muscle, pressing. The compound smells strong in the small room. The lamp is lit, and the small flame moves in the draft from the corridor. You think, briefly, about the letter from your sister, about the boy of 4 who asked what an uncle was. You think about writing back and about what you would say. You will not say anything about the Munis in 6 weeks because there is no point in saying it, and because the specific worry it might cause in someone who cares about you is not a thing you wish to produce unnecessarily. You will say that the shoulder is getting better, that the food is adequate, that the doctor is good at his job. These things are all true. You pick up the personal object from the shelf, the one that belongs only to you, and hold it for a moment, the way you sometimes hold it in the evenings, not doing anything with it exactly, just holding it. Then you put it back. The lamp is running low on oil. You tilt it slightly to pool the remaining oil beneath the wick. It will last another hour, perhaps a little more. From somewhere further in the ludus, someone is singing. Not loudly, not beautifully, if you are being honest about it. But it is a song you have heard before, one from the eastern provinces, And the melody is simple and repetitive, and in the warm, dim room with the compound on your shoulder and the lamp burning low, it is not unpleasant. You lie down on the mattress. The ceiling above you is the same ceiling it has always been. The crack in the plaster, diagonal toward the corner, is still there and still the same length it was this morning. From outside the window, the small, high rectangle, you can hear the city. Rome at night does not stop. Rome at night is simply a different version of Rome, lower and closer somehow. The absence of the wheels of carts on the stone roads, which are banned from the city center during daylight, replaced by the actual sound of carts on stone roads, and the voices of people who work at night, fuss, and the distant sound of something you cannot identify that is simply Rome being Rome in the dark. The song from somewhere in the building continues, then stops. The lamp dims slightly. You think about the footwork sequence. You think about the moment just before the net landed, the fraction of time between reading correctly and moving incorrectly. You think about it without agitation, the way you think about everything in the evenings, as something to be noted, understood, improved tomorrow, not as a failure. Failure is a word that belongs to outcomes, and you have not had an outcome yet today, only a practice, only the work. And the work is the point of the work. Tomorrow the shoulder will be stiff again. You will warm it through the rotation sequence. You will drink the pasca and eat the porridge and walk out into the courtyard and listen to Salvius say again, which is the word beneath which a whole system of patience and repetition and improvement lives. In 6 weeks, there is a Munis. In 6 weeks, the arena, with its sound and its sand and its particular quality of everything becoming simple. But that is 6 weeks. This is now. This is the room. This is the lamp going slowly out. This is your body having done what it was asked to do today and being asked now only to rest. The crack in the ceiling, the stripe of dark where the high window is, the city continuous on the other side of the wall, your shoulder looser than it was this morning. A little. You close your eyes. The ludus settles slowly, the way all large buildings full of people settle, not all at once, but in gradual installments. A door. Silence. Another door. A voice, too low to make out words, then silence. The torches in the corridor are put out by the night guard, his footsteps moving from bracket to bracket, and you track them without opening your eyes, following him down the corridor and around the corner until they fade. The lamp in your room burns out. You feel it, not visually. Your eyes are already closed. But as a slight change in the quality of the dark, which becomes complete, the room is dark. The room is quiet. From outside, very faintly, Rome. Your breathing slows to the pace of sleep, or near it, that borderland where the day's work dissolves and the body takes over from the mind, and the mind, with considerable relief, lets it. The shoulder is there. It is always there. But it is softer now. The compound doing whatever the compound does, the joint warmer and less insistent. The footwork sequence does not play in your head. You are past thinking about it. Tomorrow it will be there when you need it. The crack in the ceiling is invisible in the dark. The city breathes. And in your room, in the Ludus Magnus, in the shadow of the Colosseum, in the city of Rome in the year 152 AD, Felix, which is your name here, which means lucky, which you did not choose but have come to carry, lies in the dark and breathes, and the night receives him, and the day is done. Sleep well.